Again, thank you for joining us today. This is our third Twilight in this year. We were just discussing what is the best way to do these. Is it a one day out and have all this across the day, or the Twilights at night? Different audiences, different people, different needs. It's just getting that right is just an art form, I guess, and something we'll take back when we look at the feedback. But this is the last in the series, and this is really looking at engaging students with data and thinking about how do we engage students with data and the processes. But like what we've tried to do across the year so far is have that idea of, data dashboards and Power BIs, they can be lovely and they can look pretty and they can really help display data, but it's really the thinking about what's gone in behind them and the why and where you're up to in your process. There's a lot of schools that will come message me and say, Theo, we want help with our Power BI dashboard. I'm like, oh, okay, great. Where are you up to? And my first question is usually, are all your teachers assessing in Power BI, in Daymap or some sort of learner management system? No. But we need to fix that first. Like if you're going after assessment data. Like whereas if your data's in records, is it all in the one spot? Is it consistent? Is it clean? If those data collection practices aren't great, well then your data coming out, it's not going to be great. Like they say, shit data in, shit data out. So today we're going to go through the student aspect, and we're going to hear a great story from Seton and the work they're doing around assessment. I'm really excited about that work. It's around capabilities. And then we'll go into some of the work that we're doing here with our student dashboard, which is part of our learning pathway conversations, which are tomorrow. So it is right at the forefront of our teachers' and students' minds right now. So I'm going to hand over to Tom now to do our welcome and go through the work at Seton.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Theo, and thanks everyone for coming out. I did just want to start off by acknowledging that we're meeting on the land of the Kaurna people, and it always was and always will be the land of the Kaurna people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I just wanted to highlight artwork from one of our First Nations students as a visual representation to the connection to the country and the land in the Western region at Seton High School, and the different phases that he's identified transitioning through his school experience. And I guess the concentric circles, but also the dots representing, I guess, the holistic support network that he felt wrapped around him through those different phases. And I think thinking about this connection with the ocean and country, I reflect on growing up on Kangaroo Island and having that kind of visceral connection to the land, and thinking about myself as a third generation Kangaroo Islander and my connection. And I had the privilege of working with a First Nations woman, Holly Hode, recently, and she was talking to a cohort of students about connection to ancestry and talked about these young First Nations people were the 2,600th generation, continuous generation connected to that land. And just to really put it into that deep perspective, it gives me chills just thinking about it, of what that looks like for me from 3 generations to 2,600, and the audacity not to acknowledge and really think deeply about that connection. So I just wanted to share that. So I am, wrong way. I'm presenting on Seton High School, but really want to just flag that I'm here sharing a huge amount of work from a large range of people. And I think we all know there's leadership work, but there's also equally huge amounts of work from early adopters that really champion these things that we're trying to move forward. And I think for us, this is more of a story about a change process. I'm the head of teaching and learning and professional learning, and how we really bring everyone on board along that journey in line with our values of how we represent growth and achievement, but also the data and the systems that we need in order to do that. So trying to distill about 5 years into 20 minutes, I wanted to kind of create a bit of an arc about these 3 components. So a flower, a pancake and a horse. And look at, I guess, where we've been, where we are currently, and where we're headed. So one of the areas of huge focus for us at the moment is these rich and deep conversations about what growth and achievement looks like for us. So what does it look like? How do we know that it's happening? Connecting with trust and verifying teacher judgment, natural evidence of learning. How and what do we measure, and by whom? And for us, it's very significant of if we're creating artefacts in regards to assessing and reporting, how do we not approach it through a deficit model where people have artefacts that articulate what they're not good at, but reframe it to have it as an artefact that does represent and celebrate growth and achievement, and really is a representation of our community, our students, and the system, and how do we start the process of building currency and value around that? We all know the perceived currency around an ATAR of 95. But do we have that same currency around rich growth and development with capabilities like critical and creative thinking? So how do we kind of bring everyone on that journey? So to start off, I'm going to talk about the Golden Evening Primrose. So looking at a short history of growth and achievement, some of these things might be familiar to you, some of them won't be, but this is kind of zooming back about 8 to 10 years at the range of different strategies and initiatives that we did to kind of holistically capture data and represent growth and achievement. So we were one of the 5 entrepreneurial specialist schools in South Australia. We did a significant amount of work of the capabilities affiliated with that. With another school, we developed a kind of gamified approach to how students self-assess their capability development. We've been involved in the early days in the learner profile. The Thrive and Learn tool that people might know from tailored learning, all really significant artefacts of how we represent and celebrate growth and achievement. We developed our own independent learning framework that used the Dreyfus model to look at how students reflected as students as effective learners from novice to expert. We were doing WEC pulses of elements of wellbeing and engagement. So all of these kind of disparate data sets we're engaging with and rubrics to measure growth and achievement. But they were done in isolation, and there was no kind of targeted approach to what this looks like, and there was a low level of value and currency in regards to what that looked like in the domain of assessment and reporting. Kind of running parallel to that work was a significant amount of work in regards to learning design. And we really focused on how we challenged our own thinking and mental models of education, moving away from more of that industrial model. We reflected on our education philosophy, our lived experience, and our world views, and kind of unlearning some elements of, I guess, knowing as an organisation, as a community, that the industrial model worked really well for us, but that environment's not necessarily fit for purpose for our young people today. So during that time, some people might have been at the SASPA conference several years ago. Dr. Kellyanne Allen presented, and one of the things that really resonated with me in regards to representing growth and achievement was this idea of what we treasure, we measure, that we have to commit. If it's important to us, we need to measure and represent it in some way. And at the same time, Professor Sam Sellers presented, and he talked about this idea of data-driven to rich accountability. And this really resonated with me, that often we have our practice and what we do, and we collect data and feedback, and then we just have that kind of closed loop. We get information and we change our practice. And he talked deeply about where our values as a system and as a school community sit within how we use data to inform our decisions. So 4 to 5 years ago, this was our site plan. This was our goal 1. And I think if you're familiar with the areas of impact and where we're heading, that's far more value aligned with where we are. So this was kind of the response when we were trying to move professional learning forward of how we thought about focusing on grade bands. And I think as a leader at the time, reflecting on my own experience as a parent, there's this real kind of dissonance between what I value in education and what we were doing as a system. And I think this Seligman quote really sums it up. So I guess having all of that kind of out in the ether of what was happening at our school at the time, and understanding that we kind of take this approach where we measure a really small part of what holistically makes a student, we're at an interesting crossroad. And I guess why I reference this flower, which is found in Death Valley in Eastern California in the Mojave Desert, is that this is a flower that only blooms once every 10 years or so. But it needs the perfect conditions, it needs the right temperature, the right amount of moisture. And when all of those conditions come together, what results is this glorious, what they refer to as a desert bloom, just an ocean of colour. If you want to really play on the metaphor of, school can feel like a desolate, inhospitable environment for most of the time. So we think about timing and getting the conditions right. And so there was a moment with a leader at the school who was working with a faculty of about 45 students in an alternative learning program, and he came to me and he said, the current assessment and reporting system is no longer fit for purpose. We can no longer report just A to E grade band for these students. We've got students that are connected with us. They feel like they're growing and achieving. We had a student that couldn't ride a bike. He engaged in a program. He's now got more confidence. He rides his bike. But at the end of the semester, we're still giving him an E. And that breaks that trust, and that severs the relationship, and that student withdraws from school. And for me as a leader, that's that moment. And sometimes we know we can try to move these things forward, but if the conditions aren't right, we just kind of keep hitting a wall. So waiting for that moment, having those early adopters and that call to action, we knew it was time to really lean into this process. So I guess we took all of the learning and our key findings of all of the different capability rubrics that we developed. We took a significant amount of time kind of distilling what was important to us and bringing students into the conversation, and looked at our why, what we were already doing, how were we capturing that data, did we have a mechanism to catch that data in a clean way, where was it stored, and how we could represent that. What we also did over the course of a year from a professional learning perspective is really looked at our values in regards to how we approached evidence and assessing and reporting. And this was a process that we engaged and co-constructed this with students. So looking at our values and what we stand for and how we could more accurately create a mechanism for reporting that reflected that. So we engaged in an activity with all of our key stakeholders. I actually had this activity for us, but left it at school. And we looked at, through that level of synthesis, these are the domains that we came up with. And we asked people to commit, what's your hierarchy of values within this space? Do we value student well-being above everything else? Do we value our school culture, connection and belonging? Is academic achievement the top priority? So really distilling with all of those key stakeholders where our hierarchy of values sits. And it's a really interesting thing to do with staff, to get people to commit. One group just did everything in a line, like it's all important. It's like, no, the point is that we need to commit to this. And I guess if there's anyone that teaches physics would hate this, this image, because I know fractional doesn't work like that. But so I guess for now we start off with the areas of impact and our purpose. And everything that we do in our teaching and learning space needs to kind of go through that lens of our values. And what we found is it was interesting, there was really clear alignment between all of these key stakeholders. What our whole staff felt in regards to values, what the exec team, what students felt, and I guess we're bringing parents on board with that journey as well. And from that point, we needed to action this. And I guess if anyone has done a lot of pancake cooking, we always have the first pancake. Does anyone know the kind of analogy? What's the first pancake like? Yeah, it's always shit. All right, so we set out knowing that we were going to create the first pancake, but it was much better than creating nothing at all. All right, so I think from that growth mindset, that iterative process, knowing that, I guess, acting in some respect, knowing that you're going to come up against issues, problems, things that are going to work is really important for that team to understand. We weren't going to develop something for the 1,000 students at Seton High School, but we were going to develop a really great prototype for this cohort of 50, or 46, should I say. So that team of early adopters, we developed a capabilities assessment rubric which was placed on Microsoft Forms. There was 6 different capabilities with 4 subdomains that sat under that space. We looked at how we could pull that data down, use Power BI to create a spider graph to visually represent that. We worked with students to co-construct digital badges, so looking at things that we celebrated as a school that sat outside those traditional metrics of assessment. For us, we have our graduate qualities, so also developed rubrics for those and assessed and reported that with students. And we looked at co-creating growth comments, so sitting down, having those learning conversations and talking to students of areas of growth that they felt that was significant to them. And this was our first pancake that went home to students as their report for a semester. So it had a student self-assessment. So once again, sitting in a Microsoft form, students did a self-assessment using cloned questions from WEC of their sense of belonging and engagement. The teacher assessed the capabilities development using the rubrics that we created that sat in Microsoft Forms, their graduate qualities, and awarded gold, silver, and bronze digital badges. So gratitude, empathy, and mindfulness as a resilience project school was something significant for us that we wanted students to be able to represent. If you're a positive contributor class culture, we wanted people to wear that with a sense of pride. And as you can see, the A to E grade is still on there, but there's a lot of intentionality of having this report go home to students, reflecting proportionately the values of who we are as a school. And those co-created comments are there also. So after the first semester of implementation, we scaled up. We involved 180 students this time, and we had 15 staff involved, teachers, leaders from a whole range of different disciplines. And when we think about assessment and reporting, we always think about workload implications. So we removed the comment bank and the standard day map reporting that people were doing if they were engaging and reporting in students. So I think it was important to really say that we're not just asking you to do more, we're taking some stuff away. And there was a lot of clunky elements to this, but knowing that it was more aligned with our values, people were very willing to lean into this process. What do we learn and what do we change? Working with people like Theo, understanding that there was still this disconnect with people reporting in Microsoft Forms and it not sitting in DayMap. So looking at moving the capabilities assessment into DayMap tasks, We kept using the output using Power BI. There was a lot of positive feedback in regards to that visual representation of the spider graph. The digital badges moved to Daymap. The co-created growth comments were on Daymap. And we could also move the A to E grading back to Daymap as well. So this is an example of how the rubrics look now sitting in Daymap, and how different capabilities that are intentionally developed sit within different tasks within the learning sequence. So for this case, students aren't developing all of those capabilities at all times. There's intentionality of the capabilities that they're developing, and then they'll be represented at the end of the semester. But as Theo will share in a moment, that we're really looking at having that more interactive and dynamic sitting on a student-facing dashboard. So I guess the last aspect of sharing is where we're going, and knowing, I guess, the strategy that's sat within this space. So knowing that by utilising the enthusiasm and engagement of those early adopters, we would be getting our leg in, getting into the city, using the Trojan horse metaphor. And I guess knowing the work that we were doing in regards to capabilities and dispositions, and our work in action research and intentionality with learning design, the work that we were doing within the thinking maths space, so working with people like Pauline Carter and Amy Albrecht, we really wanted to look at how we could use this in our mainstream approaches. So our professional learning team focus was really looking at thinking maths strategies and exploring how thinking maths approaches align with the development of student capabilities. So over the last 2 years, we have a really targeted professional learning team program. All of our maths teachers were focusing on this work. And part of this work was presenting at places like the ASMS Action Research Conference on some of the key findings that were informing our work in evidence assessing and reporting. So looking at building confidence, engagement and enjoyment when tackling problem solving in maths. So I guess for us, we really wanted to go that next step in regards to embedding this approach and what we did in mainstream approaches. So by the end of this semester, we'll have our first year, I think it's 7, 8 and year 10 students will have maths-specific reports on their capabilities and dispositions that they've developed throughout the learning sequences in maths. And I guess for us, it was a bit of a call to action of bringing students and families on board, looking at this idea of inviting people to come on board, get involved with the forums of how we continue to develop capabilities and dispositions, and how we represent and build that currency in the community. So I guess looking at that Trojan horse approach, now that we're in, utilising the currency that we've built with staff and with students in that space, to look at how we can represent growth and achievement, capabilities and dispositions through that reporting mechanism that more accurately reflects our values as a school, and I think as a system. And I think working with people like Theo, we can see how that's going to continue to be more and more dynamic. And I think it's worth pointing out that Theo and I have chatted about this a lot, but I met Theo at something similar to this, I think 3 to 4 years ago, maybe, Theo? Is it that long ago? 3 years ago? And hearing his thinking and the work that he was doing was incredibly inspirational of shaping the work in this space. And I really focused on how I could bring the whole staff on board to work towards the stuff that Theo had happening. So it wasn't for me about like, well, this is what Theo's got, I'm going to recreate what Theo has, but how we can share our learning, share our failures to create something that's fit for purpose for your context. So that's my story on growth and assessment. Yep.
Only because I noticed PowerPoint's been flooded, so it makes me think about your reporting when that goes home to parents. What's been the feedback about their ability to be able to interpret that data as easily as we're hoping they can? Because you're using spider graphs and things, and for some of them that might be a new concept.
Yeah, we've got the back half of this has kind of a legend that breaks down all of this. It's probably good to share. So it has all of the standard like A to E stuff that needs to be on there, but it also has an elaboration of what the capabilities are and how they're kind of represented in that fashion. But like I said, I think the next big phase is how we get parents on board of creating that value and understanding within that space. I think, industry gets it, we get it to a certain extent, students are starting to really get it, but yeah, bringing all those stakeholders on board. And I think you'll speak to that a bit with your work as well. Is there any other questions?
I'm curious about the engagement and how students respond or understand or work towards like the micro-credentialing, like medal-based system at the bottom. Do you find that as a lever for engagement? Do students get around that pretty clearly?
Yeah, I think it's a great kind of like scene-setting collaborative activity to engage in, to talk through that at the students at the start of a learning sequence. And it's also a really great co-creation piece. There's no mandate we need 20 badges. We can have 100 badges. I think the idea of as it comes more interactive and dynamic, students can showcase the badges that they really want.
So they see them as they're being awarded throughout the learning period? They don't?
At the moment, or in this example, it was more at the end.
Right. Okay.
But now we're moving towards having that intentionality as part of the learning sequence. So as opposed to doing it at the end retrospectively.
But they're getting feedback through DAMAP about each individual assessment task.
Yes.
On these things.
So they're getting that, but the actual report they get is at the end.
Yeah, so that draws that data into these things.
Yeah. But I guess our vision is to have that in real time with that continuous assessment, to be able to have that represented so they can track that. And I guess the role of self-assessment and peer assessment is another space that we're really looking at.
Life skills, everything else?
Yeah, just I'd have to look at the rubric with life skills, but yeah.
Can I ask a question? So you got, so I guess there's a lot of teachers having to go in and do like a assessment task for their class. Is that kind of right? Like in order to get all this information in, are they assigned a lot of assessment tasks and they've got to go in and...
Yep, so they're creating an assessment task that may have an A to E rubric, and then also the capabilities task. So
they make the assessment tasks, so you're actually pulling from the capabilities rubric rather than you making the...
Yes.
Directly they do it? Yeah, okay.
Yep, but they're, like with the maths example, they would be explicitly developing a dispositional capability that would have a rubric that would sit with that component of the learning sequence.
So each learning area will have their learning area specific capabilities?
Yeah, it's interesting. Talking to, I guess, Theo, but also Marriotteville, we're at the point of looking at, we have a lot of clarity that these capabilities are reflective of our values, and doing some collaborative work with our teams, plus the use of AI, there's logical clusters of capabilities similar to the elements in SASE that align with these. So as it kind of unravels with capabilities and dispositions, and already there's like, oh, well, why is curiosity in your learning area but not mine? Early indicators is that we'll stay committed to these and capabilities and dispositions will feed into those. Because I think, and Theo will be able to shed some light on it, I'm assuming, the idea of having capabilities and dispositions for every learning area might get a bit busy, whether it's an overlay or, yeah. Anything else? No?
Do you find students are, like in that school life part, where you've got the self-assessed and the teacher-assessed bit, one of the things that we've often found is that when we talk about assessing and students self-assessing, capabilities is the desire to like get it perfectly. Do you find that as well when students are self-reporting, it's like, man, I need to like make sure that my graph is full all the way? Or are they pretty like okay with this concept that it's a process and that they're not expected to like create this perfect spider chart, this perfect like half measure graph?
The students in this aren't self-assessing their capability development. They're self-assessing their belonging and their sense of belonging and engagement.
Can I just add something to that?
Yeah.
We don't use this sort of a model, but we do self-assessment for our own students, that they have to do their own reporting on themselves. They're generally pretty on par with what we think of them as well. I mean, we have feedback going both ways. Teacher-student, student-teacher feedback, and I think the conversations are quite open, and if you've got those relationships with the kids, they already know where they sit. They're confident to tell you where they sit, not where they think you want them to be sitting.
Mm. Has anyone, because I heard at SASPA they were talking about the day maps releasing a self-assessment function. Has anyone?
Next term.
Oh, that comes out next term.
So with the assessment task that you create, it will generate a rubric.
Yep.
Apparently there's a button that you click when you create the task.
Yep.
That allows student assessment. So when they
Right.
submit their task, they'll be able to go into the rubric themselves and give an indication of the grade.
Yep.
And then when you're marking, you better go through, see what they've said, and then what you've said as well. So it's only been 7 years we've been asking for it, but it's finally coming.
All right. Do you want to jump on? Thanks, everyone. You good?
That was amazing.
I guess the other thing to flag, I guess like if from a like a validity and like how robust is that data, if you put that up against something like new metrics, you're like, oh, well, this isn't valid at all. But I think just bringing everyone on board with that it is so aligned with our values, for us it is robust.
I wouldn't discount that. Like, if you talk to some data people about new metrics, they'll find issues with the new metrics data.
Yeah.
So it comes down to how it's collected, because the feedback I got from some people that were critical of new metrics was that the progressions aren't research-based progressions. They are teacher judgment progressions of where that is at.
Yeah.
Which might not be scientifically aligned to critical and creative thinking, for example.
Yeah.
Like that.
Oh, sorry.
So that's, I think it's just making sure we're using data as an indicator and a starting point rather than the answer, I think is the important one. But that was really good, Tom. Thank you so much for that. Like after our conversation the other day, seeing all that work was like, wow, there's a lot of thinking there for us. So I don't have a presentation. I'm just going to walk you through our student dashboard that will be used tomorrow for our LPCs. So it's a collection of that data. I'll also share some of the work behind the scenes in my file around where we want to go with capabilities mapping and some of that thinking we've got around capabilities aligned to our DNA. And Justin's going to then present what's the learning activities in class, in Connect, that support this. So why have we created this to help in certain areas? So all this data does come from DayMap. This is the teacher version. The teachers have this access. It is the same as the students. The difference is that students have row level security, so they can only see their data. Obviously, we don't want them seeing anyone else's. It is aligned to our DNA of community, curiosity, and excellence. I have taken off the curiosity page for this at the moment. And the first 3 pages are live all year round, and the others are turned on and off at different times of the year for our learning pathway conversations. So this is the landing page. Depending on what year level student I pick is the pages that I'll go to at random as they, what do we got? Year 12. So as a year 12, we use our year 12 excellence. So this page here is pretty much all their schooling on one page. They can filter by learning areas, they can filter by learning assessment periods at different times of the year, and there's a summary of all their reports that they've got since they've started at the school, and a summary of all their assessment tasks since they've started at school. And if they were to click plus, it would then go deeper into all of those different tasks for them, and they can keep filtering down. Yes, that's all on DayMap, and they could find that all on DayMap. This is one page. But what this sort of helps us understand and unpack is this is their average achievement in all of their subjects since they started. A year 12, maybe not so much, but a year 11, seeing that to help with their subject choices. What learning areas have you been most successful in? One of the students I was highlighting to staff the other day was they had picked in year 11 math methods, physics, and chemistry, and they have not been recommended for any of them in year 12. You go back and look at their data, lifestyle choices in English were their highest performing subjects. Why aren't they picking those subjects? Why? That's where that conversation's now, that's where that Connect teacher's got that data point, can go, hey, you're doing this, you're telling me why, but this is where you've got some strengths in this space. So then we've got GPA, so that's the idea of around excellence. This is, at the moment, our community have high expectations around that A to E and ATAR and things like that. As we go down, we do have a year 12 excellence. Now I'm hoping the student has done the work. Yes, they have, fantastic. So this gives us a bit of an indicator of this year. So here is all their assessment tasks they've done for the year that they can scroll down. Over here is data that they've inputted from a DayMap record. So they can then talk about, are they on track for SASPA completion, getting an ATAR, what's their pathway? So that conversation tomorrow is excellent. GPA and ATAR, there's a subtle correlation, plus or minus 5. Sometimes, it depends. But it's like, okay, there's your GPA, there's your ATAR. Okay, that's a good indicator of courses. Then you've got your courses here lined up. Oh, I didn't change the date, December 19th. Oops, that was last year's. But that can help frame the conversation tomorrow, going through their reports, but looking at their assessment, achievement. Have you done your SATAC application? How's that all gone? Yes, you can. Just be mindful of the student's name up the top.
That's not big enough to see.
Okay.
I actually just want to share it with Jamie.
Yeah, yeah. So left-hand, that's DayMap data coming from teacher assessments. That's just DayMap data, but all of this bit here, that is all a DayMap record that we've asked students to fill out as part of our Connect program. So in the weeks leading up to Connect, to this day tomorrow, they'll do this, all year 12s. We also, as part of the learner profile pilot that we're in for SACE, we ask students to do a self-assessment against the self-motivated learning framework in SACE. So that's one of the 5 capabilities. So as part of the pilot, we wanted to gather evidence, and this was from term 2 to term 3. So they're doing their final assessment against the capabilities tomorrow as well, leading up to it. So here is student imported data here, and over here is teacher inputted data. So this starts the conversation, and I've tried to color match. So based on the level the student has given, it matches the colour that the teacher has given. Now, it's not numbers. I had to use numbers just for the first instance because it was just, I was time poor and that was just quick. But the next iteration of this will be the drop downs from the actual progressions, actual using the words, because that's better than a level, a number. So then the conversation comes like, where are the similarities, where are the differences? So the teacher's saying adapting's 5, which is quite high, but they feel that they're quite low. Why do you think that? What's your evidence? Now, DAMAP is weird. Do you notice this here? If the data's inputted weird or there's a comma or something, it will mess up the data when you export it for some reason. It just happened with this student. And you can see a nice spider chart that sort of gives that idea of the different levels. So that's what a Year 12 would go through tomorrow as part of that conversation as they're unpacking. On top of all the other stuff that they can go through, we sort of try to provide a lot. Because our Connect program is for Year 7 to 10, it's 5 40-minute sessions a week. Our Year 11s, it's 4 40-minute sessions a week plus 1 75-minute session where they're doing the AIF in that time. But our Year 12s, they have to do our first learning conversation to move to a mentoring program. So they start off at 4 40-minute sessions a week, and then once they've done this and gone through their self, they move to 1, and that has a mentoring approach. So they're coming in 1 session a week to sit with that Connect teacher, and those classes sit at about 20 to 25. So that's a Year 12's engagement with the data. Now, we also have our community page, and this gives you a bit of an indication of their engagement with the community. Again, these are all DAMAP records, all their excursions that they've been on. It's just a DAMAP, all their positive recognitions from this year, probably their schooling. Times out of uniform, mobile phones unpouched, ICT not ready. So we're able to collect that, give a bit of an indication. They're not in any clubs at the moment and they haven't done any school sport, but if that was a younger year level student, that's a conversation. Look, why not? What could we be doing? Are there other sports that you're interested in? Any clubs that you might be interested in? Do you know that we have clubs? Do you like Monopoly? Do you like board games? Do you like VR? Do you like, and maybe this might be an opportunity to start engaging a bit more with the community. Working with some students, their feedback was that they feel that this doesn't represent them enough. So I've been working with a group of students to create a data collection that they're inputting all the data. So it's not relying on teachers to do it, because at the moment, school sport and excursions is done generally as part of an administrative process by an SSO, but clubs, it relies on the teacher to import it if they're supervising, and it's not being as effective as I would like, let's be honest.
Would you do like a checking system that would just auto-capture it for you?
Yeah, it's just getting that, still the management of that, because to be honest, at the moment it's just a quick record, and you can attach every kid to it and just save it once, but it's just not being done. So yeah, but that's a good point. I could do that, but I like the data to be in DAMAP. As soon as I go out of another data stream, I need it to import, I need it set up, that data has to be housed on the server, and then there's a whole heap of other stuff that you have to do in the back end. 1, I don't have the technical skill to do that. 2, I don't have the time to do that. So, because there's a lot of things I could do, so I always try, like, how can I get DAMAP to do it at the moment? So that's what a Year 12 would see. We'll go back so you can start to see a different side of things. A Year 8. So this is a Year 8, this is what they would see. Same type of page. The reason why there's a difference between Year 12 and the different pages is because Year 12 is fine grading, A+ to E-, where the rest of the school is A to E. So that sort of helps us go from there, so there's that difference. And also, I can't have 4 different files for the different groups because I would miss something and something would not get transferred onto the other, and it's just a lot of maintenance. So Year 8, that's their starting of their schooling. They can see their progress over the couple of years. We can start to see their achievement, and they're starting to build that profile of that child. What you'll see is then they'll start bringing it into their schooling. for this year, so we'll start to see their assessment and their excellence so far this year. If they were a Year 9 or 10, we'd actually see their subject recommendations would be sitting in there. As part of the Connect program as well, let's hope this one's a good one. It's not bad. We do some what we call our behaviours for learning over assessment. So our teachers will do an assessment in term 2 and term 3, and we'll have them overlaid here so you can sort of see if there's been a growth or a change. So you can see that student has that activating curiosity has a bit of an increase over the term, but most of it has been quite consistent. Or the nuance is the teacher's either done exactly the same thing or they haven't done anything at all, because of the way the data gets brought over. I'm assuming all the same thing. So, so that's one of the conversations, and then we've got our scales here to help parents and students understand. The students also have done an activity in Connect to self-assess themselves as well. Our next iteration of this would be trying to get the self-assessment into here so that we can put them side by side. Also, as part of that is a goal-setting activity. Now, the student hasn't done any goal setting yet, which is disappointing, so they're not going to have much to talk about tomorrow. But you'll see that we have the behaviour for learning that they'll be focusing on. Where are they up to in their goal, and what was their goal for the learning area, so we can actually, the teacher can work through them and see if they're on track or not, and really get that student to be driving that conversation. So that's what a Year 7, 8 would see as part of the conversations tomorrow. So, and again, this is all just a day map record that students have access to that they're filling in with the headings. We try to limit the amount to free text in things, just for drop downs to help with data collection, but when goal setting, it's all free text. I'll find another student so you can see. 10, 11. There we go. So what you'll see is Year 10, 11. So that's Year 10. So this is for Year 10. So this is an extra page, and that's where you'll see those subject recommendations appear there. So that part of that learning conversation that sits in there. The student can see this is their achievement this year, that's been their progress over the years, and now this is their subject recommendation. So it's all in the one location to help with making those decisions and making sure our students are making the right decision with using the right information. Any questions at the moment, please feel free to interrupt, give feedback at any moment. I'm not wedded to what we're doing, so yes.
What can parents see?
They can't see this. So what happens is on the day, the students will bring it up and we'll have it in front of them, and their child will have it in front of them. Now, the original version of this we did take to parents to sort of show them as a student dashboard. They wanted access to it, and I said, I can't give you access to this because of using its EdPass credentials. We did look at trying to work with DayMap to see if, you know, the student profile, the student section where it has their, like, instead of that being hosted in here, this dashboard being hosted in students' DayMap. So then the credentialing and the row-level securities on the DayMap side of things. But that hasn't gone any further with DayMap, because then parents could see it then. So it's just the security at the moment. Sorry? Frog is a viable place to do this. It's still using student login details. Yeah.
Have you got any data on students
Accessing this?
Yeah.
This is my most viewed dashboard in the whole school by a mile. So my ones that I have facing the teachers, this year I've had 500 views on assessment and reporting and 600 views on student achievement and success around like wellbeing, behaviour, all that. This one has probably had 40,000 views this year. They keep going. There is a reason why too, because there is a little bit of a glitch within the DayMap connection to Power BI. when it comes to grades. Now, to see your grades on DayMap, a teacher has to publish the results. Now, in Power, as soon as a grade is entered into the box in DayMap, it's there, so it's in the data. So this was refreshing every day, so students were getting their results before they were published. So students started going here because they could get all their results, and they didn't have to wait for it to be published. So I have worked with staff and told them I will change the refresh rate to once a week at a Friday, 4:30 or 5 o'clock, least likely time that they're going to be engaging in this data. I haven't told the students that, but that's, it's very, and that's why, this is the most viewed dashboard, yes.
Do you have an example of what the student sees?
So this is what the student would see. Exactly, like this is Abby, this is exactly what she sees. So she can't change the name. So she would go here and it's blank because she's not a year 7 or 9, because the page is only filtered to year 10. So she would, we go to the year 12 one, there's going to be nothing there for her. So because of her year level and the row level security. So it's just this, whenever I put that name in, that's exactly what they see. So but as a staff member, we got access to everything. The thing for us is the capabilities work and getting that assessed. What we've found over the years, because we do assess the capabilities in our studio program, but what I've found over the last couple of years is how we collect that data is actually not very nice to do this work. So we've had to sort of redesign and rethink how we collect that data to make a good, viable visual. And we're just playing with that at the moment. And I was just going to some of the visuals. So this is just the Power BI file that I work in. We're just looking at different visuals. We've been looking at different capabilities at the moment. I'll sort of show where this language comes from. But as you can see, that's a little bit like that SASPA one. And you see it's those behaviours for learning, demonstrating respect, being considerate, forming relationships, activating curiosity. So we've been started collecting some data and some pilots in different groups just so I can play with the data just to see what it could look like. So the spider and the radar is something that we really like, but this is a longitudinal worm of those capabilities. So it's just, what does that look like moving forward? So this is just my play space at the moment, working with, because what we're sort of trying to align it to is the idea of linking it back to our DNA, and we're still in pilot, we're still drafting. We're going to look at playing in this space next term, and I'll be able to, by the end of next term, your visuals that you've created, I'll be able to create in the Power BI and start getting students to start to see those visuals, because we're using community. Essentially what we've done is gone the SASPA learner profile, we've got all the elements, and we're using them as the building blocks for our DNA, and the idea of adapting, being considerate and caring, forming relationships. That's what it means to be a member of our community, and teachers will be able to assess against these elements and provide against the progressions. So at the moment, we're just building it in DayMap to be able to do it. So then teachers will either be able to pick community, pick curiosity, pick excellence, pick behaviours for learning, or pick a selection of elements of their choosing. And because now the way we've set up the data collection is that will all be pulled in one space, so I can put all that adapting, doesn't matter how many times it's been assessed, where it's been assessed, all into one column from a data collection perspective. Because at the moment, the way we set up the capabilities assessments for our studios, it's not nice because they're in different columns, and you can't just the sheer volume of data and work that we'd have to do to get it to align is too much. So we've had to actually shift the way we collect our data to make it a little bit more robust to actually build that learner profile around capabilities and that being visually accessible on this dashboard, because that's just that natural progression of where this work is going next. So yeah, that's the data aspect and the dashboard of what the students see. I'm going to hand over to Justin now to sort of show the learning that accompanies that and the program that sits on the side that the students, because this is the end point and for some of it, and then it's the start for another. And he's going to just put it in context of where it fits.
I suppose there's a lot of work that goes with that. So we sort of see across Connect, we build into these learning conversations when you think about them as 15-minute conversations with students and parents about how do they lead conversations about where they're up to with their learning.
Okay. You can hold it or you can manage it.
So it looks at where are they up to with their learning, because again, in our learning conversations, they're not conversations with their subject teachers, because we just don't have time to do that many conversations. We've got 1,003 booked in for tomorrow. If each one of those families wanted to be there, like 4 to 6 teachers, we would just logistically never get through them. So coming back to how do we create these learning conversations which allow for the student and the parent to understand what that student's experience is as a learner in those subjects was something that we heard a lot about as a complaint from parents for a long time. And then I suppose where we sort of landed was within Connect, how do we bring the work that's happening around capabilities to give a really clear indication about what is happening in that learning space for that child that the parent understands and the teacher can make an unbalanced judgment without it feeling like they're doing another bit of reporting. And I suppose that's where we landed with the behaviours for learning. And over the last 2 years, the movement of it from these are the things that align to our DNA to encapsulate the work around the learner profile, the dispositions, and how do we sort of assess that has been really clear. And students, we all know, love being able to talk about and explore for themselves. So part of the success of this has been exactly that, being able to create that experience. So I'm just going to show you, and it's not in the prettiest format because I've had to take it from the student space in, I reckon it's in here, in our class of notes towards how does it fit in Frog, because we ran into a technical issue with the OneNote. Let me just capabilities. Oh. So when we're thinking about it, this takes students very clearly through the learning conversations themselves in order to understand why and what their aspect of it is. Like sort of Theo said, what the purpose of it sits in considering learner profile, and we build students up over the course of year 7 through to EIF, AIF and learner profile. So we really have this clear connection between the understanding of what you are doing as a learner and bring those together, because we found the connection between those behaviours for learning and the goals are really similar, and we can create a reasonably seamless experience through Connect from 7 to 12, building these different aspects in. Alright, so where I might go, because I don't reckon you're in that team with Theo, so that's why it's not going to show up. If I click on Teams, am I going to show them something that... Okay. Let's see. We'll just go into... Have we got it down? Yeah. Yeah, I think we can see enough history from 2026.
So we use OneNote as a still a planning and students to document their work.
Yep. So they'll bring that into their space, and what do they then talk about? When we roll back to even 2024, their LPCs, So you can see, like, using the OneNote allows for them to, like, keep track of their entire journey here too. I would like us to move to Frog to do this, but, you know, these things take time. So if you think about where we're up to now in terms of our learner profile, they sit within the pathways. They do their traditional substantiation aspects, but really what we want to sort of see them do is pull together their learning pathway conversations around their clusters, but also sharing where they're up to with the creation of their... That's okay. What I should actually show you instead is the behaviours for learning and the work that we do with all students across middle school. So when we sit here and the bit that students work through to support their creation of their own spider charts, their own reflection, is their Connect teacher takes them through really clearly what do these behaviours mean and what are the things that they should be thinking about and self-reflecting on when they are making their judgment within Microsoft Excel to create their own spider charts to compare with what do their teachers say. We get them to reflect on all 9 and give themselves a score 1 out of 5 because that's something that made sense to students at the moment. As we build through, we will be looking at using the word definitions like Theo showed. But at the moment for students, it really just makes a lot of sense for them to be able to give themselves a 1 to 5 score, matches up nicely with the teachers. But every Connect teacher across the middle school spends time unpacking these for students. What does that mean? Here are the examples, and we take them through a lesson where they recognise that in their peers first, and then think about when have you experienced these things? How are you practicing it? Because then what they go on, and if we go back to the Power BI, and I think they get a batch task of their goals, and I'll see if Abby probably should have done, yeah. So if we look at a student that would have done his. So when this gets refreshed, so they start this and they connect their behaviour for learning to a particular goal. And you can see Aaron's here as a Year 8 student. His goal that he set in our Term 2 learning conversation. In the lead up to this, they go back and they have a conversation with their Connect teacher and their STEM teacher, global teacher, lifestyles teacher, arts teacher. This is my goal, this is how I'm thinking about it. And they go back into the DayMap record and they update their process on the goal. And if they've not done that, the Connect teacher will ask them about it tomorrow as part of that learning conversation for those middle school students. The purpose of that is to make sure that we're coming back to these are the things and these are the behaviours that support you to be successful, okay? Within our school, we link them back into the DNA, but we keep driving back to one of the things, and I'm sure we've all sat in this room where we've tried to set goals and support students to set goals and they've just been like, I will try harder. Being able to link those to a specific behaviour allows them to create some more specific goals. And I think while these ones aren't the best, they're also not the worst. And this is part of like the Connect teacher learning and working with students is about better, more specific goal setting. So I suppose that's part of the work that sits behind this, really clear about what do these observable behaviours of learning look like, how do you link them to setting goals, how does that then relate to how you report on them in your learning conversations with your spider charts, and then how you compare that with what your teachers say, and what do you need to change or what type of extra support might you need if those are out of whack, or where are those opportunities for stretch too? Because I think when we break down, we have a look at them, we do still have a significant number of students that do quite rightly probably rate themselves highly. Our question then is, as Connect teachers and people that are supporting the learning through these goals, how are we stretching and challenging those students to recognise that it's not really giving yourself a 5, the teacher giving yourself a 5 is not the end point of this. It's how we're actually creating and recognising you're really successful with these behaviours. Excellent. How do we continue to stretch and challenge you? And I think probably some of the best results or the things that we've sort of seen here is they're not tied to a student's A to E grade. When teachers are self-reporting, they're not thinking about the correlation between, oh, this is an A grade student, they must always be organised. Especially in middle school, there's students that really school works for them, it clicks, they don't need to be organised. It's not uncommon for some of our A grade students to score lowly on being organised, for example, because we know that these two things don't always go hand in hand. Majority, yes, but not always. And I think it helps having more of a conversation about what is the experience that is in language that parents understand, that students understand, and then it allows for us to explain this is what you can do to get better that isn't linked to a rubric or in teacher speak that brings parents more clearly into the conversation. So I suppose that's a snapshot of some of the work that happens in Connect across middle school in terms of unpacking those behaviours, supporting students to set goals that are linked to those behaviours, how do they talk about them, and then how do they update them. And then students talk about that when they lead the learning conversation. There's so many different aspects across what Year 10, Year 11 and 12 experience looks like. The Year 7 experience, obviously we move through that process. So there's lots of things I can talk about here, but happy to answer any questions. That was a quick snapshot.
Moving away from 1 to 5 as well, the idea of having a progression statement rather than a numerical value, because there's the worry that the 1 to 5 becomes the new A to E, where if it's a statement, it's like, no, it's a behaviour. And when you look at those behaviours, they're a natural progression and the feedback's in the progression of what they need to do next to go up. So that's where you've got that advantage of that learner profile progressional type work. When you're creating that data stuff in DayMap, you can put numerical figures on the drop down, so you can get the nice graphs if you need to, but that provides.
And I suppose my bit with this is that as we move forward with it, like this is a fixed point in time that we have these conversations twice a year, but ultimately, how do we actually get them to realise that their behaviours are how they show up on a daily basis in a lesson, and how we sort of actually track that without over-dataing it to the point where they recognise that, unlike your end of term, your end of semester report, these are habits that you build every day that we are looking for and we know set you up for success. How do we move that to the front of their brain to actually be thinking about it? And part of how we have those conversations in Connect, but also create a visual to support them to understand that and to see that, is something that I'm really keen for us to explore. So it's not just hey, we're doing this because learning conversations are coming up, or I've got to start thinking about my goal now, or these behaviours for learning. It's like, how do we embed these to be more part of their daily lived experience within school, to recognise that the positive habits and behaviours aren't formed just when we're coming up for learning conversations.
I guess a question I would have is about when they're setting that goal.
Mhm.
If they're at a 5 already, is there a tendency for them to choose a goal that they think is well within reach rather than an area aspect of that capability that might then they might have more scope for improvement?
Yeah, it's a challenge. And I suppose Aaron, from memory's quite a good, if not a straight A student and he would have probably quite a few 5s on his graph, except clearly arts are not. So you could sort of see where he sort of sits. Yeah, academically he's crushing it. He beat me at chess, and I wasn't very happy about it. He's a very smart kid, as a Year 7. So you can sort of see his experience here I would say that his goals still create space for stretch, but it is very much an individual student's experience, and I can't say yes, every kid creates a goal that stretches them even when they are on a 5. I think moving to a non-numbered scale will probably help us have that conversation a little bit more about the importance of a jagged profile and recognising those areas of growth.
Any other comments, questions, feedback?
What do you do in Connect for 45 minutes lessons a week?
Well, that's what this page is for.
Yeah. So the underpinning of Connect sits as what we call the Vine lines. And if you go to the overview, like the first tab, what Connect teachers do is they design learning across pathways, well-being, achievement and success, capabilities in the learner profile, and student voice and leadership. So what happens in those spaces is the development of those skills over the course of 7 to 12. I'm in the middle of reworking some of the language around some of these as part of a review process to line it up with particular aspects that connect a little bit more closely with their learning. So I think about some of the work that we're doing with our numeracy leader at the moment is about how we're building in opportunities within Connect to support some of our students that are struggling with numeracy, for example, and how do we actually bring some of that connection, that understanding of achievement and success, how can that support numeracy, literacy development, whole range of different spaces, so that while there's a significant contribution of time within our timetable, it does have the focus on how does this connect and is this part of your learning as a person, both about like the things that our families and students care about around the content of A to E and the Australian curriculum, but also how does that actually see the connection between those things and what does it mean to be, achieving successful and understand that as an individual. How do you that link into your capabilities? So suppose we've got a clear reviewing continuation across what the program looks like. Teachers design learning in their team teaching models around these different aspects, and they meet within the CoLab structure to do so. I've got a series of like template type lessons that they can pull off the shelf if they want to. We also do CPC within this time too, as well as at year 10 and 11 EIF, AIF. There is no lack of things to do here, and I suppose again when we think about even the well-being aspect, we do a lot of like the Berry Street training in that every Connect should be starting with that morning circle and being that sort of check-in aspect. If we had millions and millions of dollars, my Connects would be 15 kids and they'd look like a crew, but every time I do that, Theo gets an extra grey hair. So like I suppose it is how part of the challenge is around like in that time within our timetable, how do we build student capacity to be a productive member of our community and understand that and have that sense of it, and as a team of Connect teachers, how equipping them to have the skills to do that.
We're starting to see some more traction in that space. Like a lot of staff have struggled with that many times. Like I'm a maths teacher. I got trained to teach maths. I didn't train to do this, but like Justin's done a lot of work to provide a structure, provide lessons, and what we've found is that people can put stuff into Connect and nominate to have things in. So we talk about like assessment reporting procedures and policies, and we talk about that positive behaviour for learning where we want to teach people explicitly our expectations. Connect is a good opportunity for that. That multiple exposures, do it every term. Week 2, every term we want you to go through the deadlines policy with everyone, or meeting agreed timelines procedure. So it's just that reinforces that. I think we're at the point where we're having to say no to things going into Connect because there's just so much that people want to put in there, because there's another opportunity to do that.
Is engagement with Connect reported on in the end of semester reports?
I send out, and all parents get, this is what we've covered in Connect as a year level. In terms of like, is there
like a report back at their attendance in Connect, because it's in the morning. There's not that. And I suppose like I to and fro, and I've not found a good model that I'm comfortable yet around assessing Connect and what does that look like. That's a bigger piece of work that I'm working through.
I think what we've also seen is like some of our work data, we're starting to see some improvement in some of those belonging pieces there. Like slowly, like it's a big beast to tame. I think what we've also seen is our LPCs. Like tomorrow, we've got our biggest turnout ever tomorrow. Over 1,000 have booked in. We've never hit that mark before. So I think what we're starting to see is just that gradual change. And I think as our 7, 8 and 9 start to get to 10, 11, 12, we'll start hopefully hitting that 11, 1200 mark, because the parents have been involved with it for so long that it's just what we do. Any other questions?
Just sort of one of the things that Tom talked about was that when you're looking at a student data dashboard, how do you make it so that student who, gets E's and doesn't achieve well, doesn't attend, how do you make it so they look at it and they can see that they want to look at it again, right? Like, how do you find that? So I just wonder if you found that that's a challenge and what your thoughts are around that, I guess.
It's a good one, because when I look at the data to see who's watched it the most or who's clicked on it the most, it's the high achieving kids have gone there the most. And that's why we wanted that idea of the community page to be on there. And on next week, I'll probably get rid of I'll hide most of them, and they'll only be probably their excellence and community page will be the only ones there. So I will pretty much, all of these from here will all be turned off. And that's where that capabilities work is going to come in very helpful, where the idea would be to have this, because there's a large majority of our community value this and want this, but it would be then having that those capabilities pages bigger, and on the community page, them ability to put their own data in, so they'll be able to start to see their own stuff coming through, like, oh, I'm volunteering over here, or I'm playing state netball there, or I'm on that committee here. Like that stuff will start to populate in there, so that will help bring them into that space as well. And so that's the long-term effect. Because like when it comes to reports, I just love how small A to E were on the reports. Like that's where I'd like to get to, is what we send home is just this little, what is it? And all the other capability stuff is much bigger. I just love that.
Speaking of capabilities,
I suppose the bit that I didn't talk about is the role that Reflecting on Studios plays within preparation for the LPCs too. So part of like what we talked about is the challenges around clearly assessing student progressions with capabilities from like the teacher angle, but obviously with students being able to select their studios across 7, 8, 9, part of the work that they do in the lead up to the LPCs is actually map not their progression against the capabilities, but at least their subject choices in studios align to the capabilities. So the idea is that's the first step in trying to create that profile of how the capabilities and what they do in studios says a little bit of a story about their progression within capabilities, even if we're not at the assessing bit yet. How are students taking opportunities to focus on particular capabilities within their studio selection? So they do a bit of an update every year of these are the studios that I've done so far. These are the capabilities that those studios have assessed, and they do a color-coded grid for that, and they mark how they've been assessed against the different levels currently as a bit of a reflection tool of these are the capabilities I've developed through studios. This is the level that they currently sort of sit at, and they're still number-based. But I suppose that's part of the work as well around having students be familiar with, I'm not just picking this studio because I like cricket or my friends have picked it. At least adding in that understanding of you're developing these capabilities, you can start to see what that profile looks like with coloured dots within a target, like a space. So I suppose that's also part of this work that I should have mentioned before.
Do students find those different shades of green that you had when you had the 1 to 5, do they find that challenging? Or have they got used to it over the time?
To be honest, that's this year thing. So we're still in that feedback, getting that, going through that with them. So that's a work to come to get a little bit of a better understanding of being able to see that connection across the data sets, just to see, oh, there's a difference or there's a similarity here, or if that's the best way to do it. So still working in that. Yeah, I think that's just the nature of our work. It's never finished. It's just, what's next? How do we iterate, get better? Well, if that's it, well, thank you all very much for coming this evening. I think we're finishing up a little bit earlier than we were going to, but I think that there's nothing wrong with an early minute. But yeah, happy to hang around and have a chat if you've got any other dying questions. But yeah, thank you to Tom. That was fantastic. Thanks, Justin. Thank you.